Okay, in the last session, I produced the basis for the entire track using nothing more than 4 notes. Now, I know this may come across as overly simple, but I've produced an awful lot of music for artists over the past 25 or so years, and this is a system that just works. There's no need to make things more difficult than they need to be. So the obvious next step now is to turn these 4 notes we have here into a powerful trance chord progression. Now, I talked about basic chords in our theory refresher course at the beginning of this tutorial, and I said that if we want a major chord we can just go with the 4-3, or if we want a minor chord we can just go with the 3-4. So what I want to do here is produce triad chords from our root notes here and see how it goes. So this first one here I can use 4-3, so I mean obviously that's going to be A, C, E there. The second one I could use 3-4, which is going to be, it'll be F, A, C there. This one would be just a simple triad, be a D, F, and an A. And this one, which obviously that'll be a minor chord, and this one E, G, and B there. That's going to be a minor chord. So basically there we've got a minor, major, minor, minor. So let's have a quick listen to that. That's how simple it is. So there we've got a very basic set of chords, but the problem is that they're not very powerful. I mean, trance tends to exhibit this huge sound, especially with the breakdown and the chords coming, and well, they don't sound very huge at all. Now, the trick to make chords larger is to evolve the chord by adding further notes to it. And we can do this by simply continuing with our chord math. For example, my first chord here ends on the E there, so I could use 3-4 to continue this. So 3 notes after E is going to be the G, 4 notes after G is going to be the B, 3 notes after the B is going to be the D, and just so on and so forth throughout the scale now. So I'll take that up to the F, I could go to the A, to the C, to the... I mean, there's no need to go that big on a chord if you don't want to. I'm just showing you how you can do it. I'm going to do the same with all these chords. So this one I would take to the E, and then it would go... I could go up to the B, I suppose. I'll go to the G first. Go to the G. And I'll go up to the B. Then the D, then the F, then the A, and then to the C. So have a listen to those. Massive chords. I just want to show you this for just an example. I'll clean them up in a minute. This is just to show you how it's done. From there we can go to the C. We could go up to the E, to the G, B, D, F, A, and then finally this one is on the B. So that's the D, the F, A, C, E, G, and then we'll go up to the B, I think, there. So we have these huge chords now. I'll just actually take that down a bit so you can see everything. The size of those chords. Now obviously if I play this back it sounds a bit rough, but we've got huge sounding chords there. There, I mean, that would produce a huge sounding chord, but the problem with this approach is that we're creating a lot of fundamental textures that are harmonically close to one another. To better explain what I mean, we should really look at the sounds on an FFT if we can. Pretty sure I've got one in here. Let's look at, it probably be metering. That'll do. Now, if I play this back, you can see there, the loudest note in there is our fundamental notes. So you see, we've got a series of fundamental notes in here. This is the loudest harmonic that's going to determine the pitch of the note. And then we have all these associated harmonics all the way along there that are related to the fundamental and provide the character of the sound. Now, in the chords here, I've probably got about 10 notes there or so, haven't I? Something like that. So you've got to think that that's 10 fundamental frequencies, each roughly a third apart. And so it's not a surprise that it's going to create this large sound that we think we're looking for. But the problem is that trance is a particularly busy mix with the leads, the acid lines, the plucks, the pianos, 3 or 4 rolling basses, and I don't know, maybe even vocals all dancing around our soundstage. And that means that if we want these huge chords here to play all alongside that, you're going to have to carve out large chunks with heavy-handed EQ just to fit everything else into the mix. And while that's fine, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, why not just create a sound that requires less EQ in the first place? So let's do that, and I'll show you how to do that with these chords. And what we do is we randomly pick a number that's either 6 or 9. So I'm going to say I choose 6. Now what I do is I count up, including the root note, 6. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It gives me the D. So I then delete all those notes above and below. Leave me just those 2 notes. Remember, it was start there. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I keep the 6th note. Now on the next one, I could say, well, I'm going to count to 9. So we start at the F there. So it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There. That's the note I want to keep. I get rid of all those. And I get rid of that note as well. And on this one, I can say, I'll count to 9 again. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I get rid of all those notes. And I'll take that note away as well. And on this final one, I could say, what have I done here? I went 6, 9, 9. I'm going to do 6 for this one because I've done 9 on those 2. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll keep that one. I'll get rid of all those. And I'll get rid of all those above it. Something like that. Now, you can use pretty much any order of those numbers. I could have chosen 9 for the first one and 6 for the second. It's not really that important. What is important is that this technique gets us in the ballpark for a nice, large-sounding chord that's not going to take up a ton of space in our mix. Sometimes you are going to have to find that you've got to kind of nudge a note up or down by a semitone if it sounds a bit pissed, but 99% of the time, it'll give you the results that you're going to need. But anyway, if you look at that, our chord now only has 2 notes, and generally a chord has 3. So to make this into 3 notes, all we need to do is grab our root note there and copy it up by an octave. So that's at A1. I'm going to move it to A2. This one is at F1. I'm going to copy it up to F2. This one is at D2. Copy it up to D3. And this one is at E2. Copy that up to E3, like that. So let's have a listen to what we've got. Well, there you go. This is what I mean by it kind of gets you in the ballpark. These 3 notes sounded fine to me. This one sounded that little bit pissed at the beginning. And if you listen to it, it's... don't quite like the sound of that. But if we need to correct it, all we have to do is either move it down a semitone or up a semitone as long as we're in key. Now obviously if I move down, I'm moving down to a C sharp 3. That's not in the key, so I'd move it down to the C3. And same as I'm going to move it up, can't go to D sharp 3, but the next available note in my key is the E. So I'll push it up to E. Let's have a listen to that. See how it works? It just sounds much better now. I could of course probably take that down to C, have a listen to that. Again, that works as well. It's rather a dark chord that though. I think I prefer it up at the E. I don't know though. It's a difficult one because I like them both. That sounds happier, I think. That pulls you down a bit more. I think I'm going to go with the E. I might change it later. But anyway, that's it. That approach adds thickness to our chords, but because the fundamental frequencies of each chord aren't tightly crammed together as they would be with the typical triad chord, you know, we don't have this huge sound that is going to take a lot of heavy-handed EQ to try and squeeze it into the mix later. So I just want to quickly recap what I've done to compose these chords here, because even though it is a very, very simple process, it can kind of seem a bit strange and a bit difficult to get your head around at first. So the first thing we want to do is we don't worry about actually producing a chord. We're only concerned with producing steps of root notes here that connect to one another by, as I've said, a series of leaps or steps. Now, I did mention earlier that the most common movements for these root notes would be first to the fifth to the sixth to the fourth, sixth to the fourth to the first to the fifth, fifth to the sixth to the fourth to the first, fourth to the first to the fifth to the sixth, and then mine here, which is first to the sixth to the fourth to the fifth, which, as I've mentioned, I did without realising. I was just trying to show you how you leaps and steps in there. Then what I do after that, I compose a triad chord from them. Now here you can use either the major 4-3 or the minor 3-4 pattern to build a mix of major and minor chords. It really doesn't matter. But once you have that triad, just continue building the chord up by another 4 or 5 notes. Then you choose between 6 or 9. You can add more numbers in there if you want. For example, you could say, I'm going to choose between 6, 9, 11, and 13 if you wanted. But for me, when I'm working with trance, 6 or 9 tends to work the best because it keeps them a bit more compacted, the chords. If you go up to 11 and 13, you can have huge gaps between them, and it might sound a bit overly powerful when we start to add everything to it. And then all you do is you delete every other note except the root note and the note that you picked by counting up. And then finally, you just copy the root note up by an octave. And that's it. Now, just that procedure results in a thick, broad-sounding chord that isn't going to require a ton of EQ to fit in your mix. And you don't just have to use this in trance, regardless of the genre. If it's going to be a particularly busy mix, you can use this technique there too. Now, you can leave the chord as it is, but what I like to do is always add a bit of excitement in these chords here, especially to this final chord, because this creates, as I've said before, the resolve into this chord. So I like to have a bit of excitement in this chord here. So what I tend to do, I tend to just call up scissors and just cut this note in half there, like that. And then you can even move this down or up a semitone as long as you're still in key. I mean, obviously, if I move up there, I'm in A sharp, which is out of my key, so I can move it up to the B, for example. So let's have a listen to that. Can you hear it? It just has that little bit of excitement to the very end of it. You can do it anywhere, really. I mean, we could, for example, take all these, cut them in half, and we could move them down like that. Just check they're all synced. Here they are. So. Probably a bit much that. What I might do is I might just cut the end there and just move that end down. A bit of a groove in there. Perhaps say take this one and maybe I don't know, cut that one in half and move those up. So I'm on the G, and the B. Let's have a listen to that. You can feel that it sounds a bit fast. It doesn't feel like it should do that. But anyway, I just play around with the chords and experiment in that way. I quite like how that is now, with those kind of moving down, then coming into these two long chords, and then the end moving. And there we go. We have the basis for our trance chords. Now, I know that some of you may be thinking that these chords are going to sound a bit weak at the breakdown. I mean, you know, all trance drops down to the chords just before the main beat drops back in, and they're usually huge and smothered in reverb, and it builds a huge atmosphere. But don't worry about it for the moment. We're going to be using other techniques to create that huge sound. So stick with me on this. Create your chords like this. There's no need to make it any more complicated than it already is, and you will see this begin to come together as I start using all these techniques. Okay then, before we move on to the next session, what I want you to do is I want you to open your door and have a go at creating the chords using the exact same techniques that I've used here. Now, I feel that this is important because just sitting on your ass munching cookies and drinking coffee and, you know, watching me do something isn't improving your production skills. It's not pushing you anywhere. All you're doing is learning a little bit of information, but unless you put that into practice, it's not going to help you at all. So what I want you to do is rather than copy what I'm doing here, because there's no reward at the end of that. If you end up with the same track as me at the end of the tutorial, you'll be like, yeah, I've got the same track as him. So what? It doesn't make a measurable difference. What I want you to do instead is forget all of this monkey see, monkey do crap that's pushed into you in schools and other educational facilities. Forget all that. I want you to create something for yourself. So sit down at your door, choose a different key, use different root notes than I've used here, and come up with your own track. Follow me step by step, but change things that I'm doing. Now, the reason I say that is because if you do that at the end of this tutorial, you're going to come up with something that is just yours and yours alone. And that is an immeasurable amount of progress. You're going to break psychological walls by doing that. So at the end of the tutorial, you've got a completed track that doesn't sound like mine. It's your own track. And the help that this can give you, I can't describe how helpful it can be. It'll break down these walls and it'll make it so much easier for you to create music. Now, if you're going to struggle with what chords to use, if you're not sure, I've got them here. You can use 1-5-6-4, 6-4-1-5, 5-6-4-1, or 4-1-5-6. So just change the key, use those chords, and carry on with me. As I do something at the end of the session, you do it, but do it slightly differently and see what you can come up with. So get on to writing your chords there, and then we'll catch up in the next session.